President Barack Obama is laying out a plan for lowering the cost of college tuition, making higher education more affordable and accessible. It's a proposal incorporating a rating system that would in part determine the amount of federal financial aid, among other factors. We discuss the state of higher education on Newsmakers. The cost of a college education may very well be at a crossroads. A global workplace makes a degree highly valued, but at what cost? There are more and more stories of graduates working low-paying jobs while trying to pay back tens of thousands of dollars in student loans. Who better to discuss possible solutions and the importance of a degree than Dr. Mary Sue Coleman, president of the University of Michigan, and Dr. Thomas J. Haas, president of Grand Valley State University. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
Would you call it a crossroads? Are we at a point where accessibility may not be there for everyone?
Well, you know, both of us have worked very hard at our own institutions to make sure that college affordability is the top of our list. And we are concerned about it. I think it's always an issue. I certainly don't think that college is unaffordable for Michigan families, and I think you would agree with me.
Absolutely. It does come down to access, affordability, and attainment. And a couple of ways we can approach that is access for those students that want a degree from a public institution. Without a doubt, that degree is from a public institution, which means that there is a compact between the citizens and the higher educational institutions here. Affordability, again, a partnership with the state because of funding, but also a partnership with others through scholarships and access made available through that affordability. And then attainment. At the end of the day, it is about the degree. And maybe how fast the student can accelerate their progress towards that degree.
And we both monitor debt loads very, very closely. At the University of Michigan, we've not seen any dramatic increases in debt loads. In fact, we think the debt is pretty manageable that students take on, even given that. You know, we've worked hard to raise money to replace loans with grants so that families and students don't have to take on this burden. But we've also both talked about the rapid disinvestment from the state, not only in Michigan but other states. I mean, we're now 39th in the country as a state in terms of our investment in higher education. And we both make the point that investing in your young people to give them access to great higher education is one of the best investments by payback that a state can make. And so it's a compact. The compact's broken. We need to establish the new compact and invest in ourselves. And that's what we're both very concerned about.
It does come down to the development of talent and also the intellectual capacity we have within our public universities as well. So the research and scholarship that comes out, as well as the talent that comes out of our institutions. We've driven down our costs here at Grand Valley through the years. In fact, I use the statement 30, 90, 30. 30% increase in the number of enrolled, 90% increase in the number of graduates, and 30% in a reduction on the cost to produce each of those graduates. And we also know that for those students that start at Grand Valley, finish off in 4 years, and when we look at the grants and aid, scholarships, Pell Grants, and all 40 some odd percent students here are still first generation. So what we can do is we can actually point to the fact that 40% of our students that graduate in 4 years have no debt.
Well, let's take a look at the relationship between the state and the lawmakers who kind of set the per pupil, I guess you could kind of, to equate with people who have high school students. There is a set amount of money that the state gives to each institution here. So where are the disparities in the way that this compact is supposed to work and how it's actually working each year when the budget gets set?
Well, over the last 10 years, we've had a 50% reduction in real dollars in every per student. I mean, it's dramatic. You and I have seen the most dramatic reduction in state support in the history of the United States. I mean, it's happened in Michigan, it's happened in other states. So we are struggling to make up the difference. The 50% cut over 10 years in our own cost containment, which we work very hard to do, in raising philanthropic dollars and having moderate tuition increases. Because our cost increases have been very modest, but it's this dramatic drop in state support that's caused the gap, and is really something that we both worry about terribly. And we're talking to the legislature all the time by reinvesting in higher education the way they used to. Michigan used to be a top 10 state. It used to be at the top in investment in higher education. We're now 39th. You know, do we want to celebrate being 39th? I don't think so. I think we want to do more than that, and that's what we're trying to point out to the citizens of the state.
And the legislature, there is a myth that the legislatures, and I've talked to them individually and say, why are our costs going up? Why is the cost of higher education to the student and their families going up? And they said, because your administration is way out of whack from what it was. And when I show them the data set that shows that for 20 years we've had about 9% of our administrative costs go flat, 9%, the rest of them going into the educational core mission. So that's a real myth. So what we have to do is come back to the notion, again, that there's been a disinvestment in public higher education across the nation, and in particular here in the state of Michigan over these past years.
Would you say it's been like a 75-25, that years ago the state funded 75% of higher education, and now it's the reverse? That now
it's worse than
or
reverse.
worse.
or worse.
It's
worse
worse.
than reverse. I know that we're 14% now. By the way, the state does not count for enrollment. We'll put that out on the table. They do not. So as we increase the number of students, we actually got a decrease in the state appropriation per student. We're about $2,400 per student. The average in the nation is still around $6,500. So other states are making investments. Go down to North Carolina, take a look at what they're doing. So there's this really great gap in terms of what we are receiving in higher education here in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know that there are committee hearings at a certain point in the year. Do lawmakers who you meet with, do they understand it, or where is the disconnect as far as you can tell from where you sit?
Well, it's a setting of priorities, and you know, we understood that during the midst of the Great Recession that we were going to have to make sacrifices, and we did. But the state is now coming out of that recession. And so we're making the argument, as the state comes out and it thinks about 20, 30 years into the future, we want an educated workforce. We want to be able to fill those 50 to 80,000 jobs that the governor keeps talking about going unfulfilled because our population is not educated enough for those jobs. So that's the kind of reinvestment we'd like the state to consider. And we talk about it with the legislators all the time. I think, you know, it's our responsibility to show people how we can use those dollars wisely and what it will produce for the state.
I think that's a good point too, because we do have to look at maybe a little bit different approach. But I am thrilled with the fact that there are some performance metrics in place to look at now, but 1.76% of the budget associated with performance metrics. And you can pick and choose what you like, but it's a pretty good model, similarly as what I saw in the state of Michigan when I was president in SUNY. But there's $1.2 billion that has no accountability associated with it. So what I would do is say, let's make sure that we are using those dollars well and get the best return on those dollars, and then let's again start adding back dollars in terms of the performance. Maybe have a strategic plan for higher education in the partnership that we must have.
That's right, and in fact the Business Leaders of Michigan, which is a CEO group in the state, you know, has a plan for the next 10 years for the state to reinvest, to get back to where we were in 2002. I mean, we could do it. It's easily doable over 10 years. It's something that I would hope that the state leaders would look at, because I think it's a very sensible plan.
But this is what the Governor Snyder has proposed all along. He likes metrics, he likes the dashboards, and having the performance-based rewards. So you're saying that we need to have much more of that in this state?
I think what we do is we look at the dollars invested right now, making sure that they are impacting the state as the state needs, and then look at the investment dollars to bring us back to the top 10. So I think we can and must do both. Let's make sure that the dollars are used well, and the investment dollars coming in are reaping the benefits for the citizens of the state.
But you've got to have some reinvestment if we're going to get back to a top 10 state. I mean, there's no other way to do it.
You got to do both. You really do.
We can fantasize about it, but Michigan is not going to be in that progressive, economically viable, looking toward the future state if those investments aren't made.
So which states are doing it right? Which ones are investing and you do see the results?
North Carolina has invested all along. They didn't take nearly the cuts we took.
Right.
I mean, their support is so much greater than we are. Virginia's beginning to reinvest. Massachusetts is reinvesting. California's reinvesting. I mean, you go down the line. Iowa's reinvesting. They're beginning to reinvest because they understand the importance for their populations.
And we're going to compete. We're going to compete for those students because we said we want to attract some more out of state, and I think it's a good way for us to go because then we can attract and keep them right here in the state. It's wonderful because we have lost numbers of students through the Great Recession to other states, so we need to get them back here. So there's more strategy that I think we can do together with the state policymakers.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that you told me that you have recruited many more out-of-state students to Grand Valley. That's a wonderful thing because you've got a fabulous institution, and it's really good to get that geographic diversity, and it's good for Michigan because if students come here to school, maybe they'll stay and take a job, and that's what we'd love for all over the state.
And we've been successful too because 84% of our students that graduate are working right here in Michigan, 75% in West Michigan. But when you look at the impact, again, of dollars spent here by the state legislature, there's a pretty good return. We need to get back to that investment strategy and the priority, as Dr. Coleman was saying, it has to be, higher education has to be a priority for the state.
Well, you would think, I mean, this is a business-minded governor. It seems to be part of the plan. You would hope that infrastructure, which is on the radar, and education would be right there if you want to grow your economy. In the states that you mentioned, Dr. Coleman, is there the jobs, economic output that comes along with the investment in higher education?
Oh, of course. Of course, all those states, are generating jobs like crazy, and economic growth is returning, and that's what we would hope for Michigan.
And then President Barack Obama laid out the college affordability plan, which essentially says that those schools that aren't performing, then that does not have the higher graduation rate, that therefore there should be some kind of a penalty, I guess, when it comes to student loans. It's a ranking system, and again, it's the performance. You agree with that type of a plan?
I agree with accountability, without a doubt. And then you can look at the metrics, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. We're a different institution than U of M.
That's right.
We have our peers. In fact, here in the state, we're best in class within our peers nationally. U of M is best in class in the world, without a doubt. And so we have to make sure that it's not one-size-fits-all. I did drill down into those metrics, and a couple of them make sense, a few of them don't. For instance, on affordability, for instance, they say that we're high tuition. Well, why are we high tuition? Well, we're high tuition because of the state disinvestment. If we were to be treated as we were or would be in North Carolina, my tuition would be about $2,300 per year, not my sticker price about $10,500. But I'm also reducing that substantially. My net cost of tuition is about $6,500. But I think what we have to do is make sure that it's not one size fits all.
I agree. One of the beauties of higher education in this country is that we have a variety of different kinds of institutions, and urban institutions are going to have a different mission and a different sort of outcome than a Grand Valley, undergraduate, comprehensive, some graduate programs than a University of Michigan. And it is not, we're not going to get the outcome that we want by trying to be simplistic about what the measures are. But I haven't met a college president yet that doesn't want to be accountable for the outcome. We do. We want our students to have success, and we're willing to be measured.
And that's the key, student success. That's what we want. And we want the institution to be successful because, again, the intellectual assets that we have for the state are so critical in the vitality of that state. We can develop the talent, develop the other capacities we have. We can turn Michigan around, and it can be done with that investment strategy that Mary Sue's pointing to.
I think the other thing that bothers me is this current conversation that you hear that universities or colleges should be measured by the salaries of their graduates. Well, if my undergraduate institution were measured on success by the salary that I got when I finished my BA, I mean, it's ridiculous, because what's going to matter over life is how well you do in your career and how well you're able to maneuver, how well you're able to adapt to new industries. I mean, we know now, even now, that there are industries developing that didn't even exist 5 years ago. So again, I think we need to be careful about what are the parameters that we value. We certainly don't want to discourage students from going into fields where they're never going to make a lot of money, but they're very beneficial to society. So we just need to be cautious about what it is that we're going to use for these measurements.
And I do think that the president, though, picked up on one thing that's important and resonates with Mary Sue and me, and that is the states also have to be accountable as well. They have cut back dramatically. He made mention of that. So I think that he's calling them out in a way, and also telling us that we better be efficient and accountable. And I embrace that. Mary Sue does, and I think, as she said, every college or university presidents across the nation are going to say the same thing.
And you even wrote an op-ed piece.
I did. Providing
advice to how to really make it less expensive to go to school.
Sure, we have we've got great community colleges. You can bring in those credits. We have wonderful relationships across the spectrum of education. K through 12 has to be part of the mix as well. We looked at 3-year programs. We have had hundreds of students get out in 3 years at Grand Valley if they bring in the array of programming. And one of the things I'm really proud of with we call the Grand Finish. I'll give $1,000 to a student that brings 90 credits or more by the time they start their senior year, and I'll give them $1,000 on top of all their financial aid to get out in 4 years, because I know that's going to reduce some of their costs downstream, especially with debt load. So yeah, we have to be innovative and entrepreneurial in a way, and really respond to the student needs.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
I'm sure you hear it from families. You know, why is it so expensive for me to send my child to school? And it keeps getting more and more expensive. It's not always that easy for them to hear that. But what else can be done?
Well, Mary Sue has great stories about her affordability and making sure students have access to U of M.
Well, all of us work hard at this, but because of our fundraising ability for scholarships, because of our cost cutting, you know, for many families, it's cheaper to go to University of Michigan now than it was 5 years ago. I mean, that's a story that we need to get out over and over again. We will guarantee any family in the state of Michigan that if your son and daughter can get into Michigan, we will make it affordable for you. And that's a story that we need to keep repeating. I'm astonished when I go out into communities and realize that no matter how many times I say it, people just don't realize, and they're afraid even to apply to the university. So that's a story that we need to keep talking about. I'd like for the citizens of the state to urge the state legislature and the governor to increase investment in higher education. One of the reasons that our costs go up is because the state has disinvested so dramatically. We're trying to counter that in every way that we can, but these things are not, I mean, they're not unconnected. They're all connected.
But the business community is coming to the table. Our foundations are coming to the table. We've been working with the Grand Rapids Foundation right here, provide scholarship for GRPS students. We have to, again, think about that continuum of higher ed, and we need to get the students that are in grammar school and high school, they have to graduate, and then they have to see themselves, whether it be at a college or in some other way, being a contributing member of society.
I think particularly the Grand Rapids community has come together in such a powerful way to try to help and make it possible for students to be well prepared and also for them to afford to go on to higher education. And the community colleges, you made a really good point. The community colleges are a key piece of this, because students who start at community colleges transfer. We have a number of them transferring in also at Michigan, do extremely well. So they can be well prepared. It's a way to cut cost, another good way to cut cost.
And the other way too is collaboration. I'll give you an example. The U of M and Grand Valley, I counted up, there's literally hundreds of touch points between our faculty and research. There's programs in chemistry and in water. There's programs in philosophy and English. You look at engineering, you look at business, look at all these touch points with our faculty as well as the programmatic work too. A good example is with our OT program. We get your kinesiology students, come on over here, and we in turn send students on over there. So we want to provide opportunities for students to access those programs, those relevant programs that are important for the state.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing more of the private sector coming in as well, especially some of the naming rights and those types of things and the donations that are coming in. Are you seeing more of the business community realizing that maybe the funding isn't there and that there needs to be a financial push from the private sector to encourage things?
You know, the Grand Rapids community has always been exemplary in coming together and collaborating to make sure that the needs of the state are addressed. But the thing that I've been so impressed with over the last decade, particularly, is the way that business leaders all over the state have begun to put as a priority investment in higher education. And I talked before about this Business Leaders of Michigan group, but they have a plan, and they've presented it to the governor and to the legislature about how to get Michigan back to a top 10 state in a number of different ways, but one of their pillars is reinvestment in higher education, that's going to be essential, an essential part of making us a top 10 state again.
And one of the areas very specifically that I like is with regards to internships. We had over 7,000 interns last year, and so we invested in Detroit. There's going to be opportunities to, again, create these opportunities that we have with our business leaders to provide those internships and clinicals and other opportunities for our talent to be developed and keep it right here.
Yeah, it's one of the best ways for young people to know about jobs in Michigan is to have an internship. Because I worry about, you know, they read the headlines, you know, things are bad in Michigan, high unemployment rate, no jobs, and they will go out of state just because they think that there's no opportunity for them. If they have an internship here, I've seen it happen. An internship is a very powerful way in which to introduce a student to the opportunities, and I just see hundreds of them now wanting to stay in this state because they've had that experience.
Well, it's a real springboard too. You'll either know whether or not this is the career path or I need to go into another direction. Do you see the delivery system of learning changing with the internet and what's taking place out there? A lot of these sites out there with really free courses that are online.
I'll let you take that one up, because you and I are so much aligned on this.
We've talked about it. You know, technology is changing rapidly, and there will be some ways that we can use that technology in a traditional university setting. But I think both of us have seen the power of what happens on campus when students work in groups on real problems, use their knowledge to solve problems. That's what a real essence of education is, and I can't imagine that being replaced by sitting in front of a computer screen.
No, and well, the MOOCs, these massive online programs and all, they're out there. It's a good way to collect content, and I know that numbers of our faculty are using that. That's fine. We're doing other innovative things in the classroom, hybrid courses, flipped courses, and things like that. But I think there is going to be a transformational opportunity that I will see in my professional lifetime, and that's moving away maybe from course credit hours into competencies. And that to me is pretty exciting. That takes it beyond just the MOOC, which is a delivery, into really transformational educational change too. Competencies with when you identify what that bachelor's degree represents or the master's degree represents, we already do it in large part in the health professions.
That's exactly right. I agree with you.
But there are that's a philosophical debate right now. Do you need it's brick and mortar versus?
I think it's a philosophical debate for people who don't understand education at its basic level and see what happens on a university campus. You know, we all know that the completion rates on MOOCs is about 10% or less. I mean, it's fine. I'm not, you know, there will be good ways in which there will be interactive programs and we can collect all sorts of analytical data about how students perform. That will have its place, but that will, in my view, never take the place of the experience of a student doing something, whether it's a project in downtown Detroit or a project in Ypsilanti or a project in Ghana, on a program working with other students to solve a real world problem. This will never be substituted by an online experience. Doesn't mean the online may not have a place, it may very well, but what I see is the experience that students get in working from other students from all over the country, from all over the world, that diversity that happens in opinion, and I know you can create some of that with online chats and things, but I still don't think you can create that superb learning environment that we have on our campuses.
And as educators, we understand the role of an exemplary faculty in creating that relationship. And I think that that will not go away.
Dr. Thomas Haas, President, Grand Valley State University. Dr. Mary Sue Coleman, President, University of Michigan. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Patrick.
And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.